Hi there, my name's James. I work in advertising, I'm a planner. I also write as well, and sometimes I provide training as well. Now, we hear a lot, don't we, in lockdown about trying new things. I, for instance, have done two things I said I'd never do before: grow a beard and cut my own hair. So I'm just glad this is on catch-up rather than live. I can't see you looking at me. But in that spirit, I thought I'd try something else that I've never done before and start this talk with a magic trick. I'm going to try to predict the future. I'm going to make you think of something, a number, and in about a minute or so's time, I'm going to attempt to guess what it is. I know, right? Knife edge stuff. So before I start, let me just write down the number I think you're going to think of. Okay, bear with me. Bear with. Right. Okay. Think of a number, please, between 1 and 10. Okay. Now write it down if you want to, because you're going to need to remember it. Between 1 and 10. So you've got your number. Okay. Now take that number and double it. Okay. To that number now add 10. Okay. Now take that number and halve it. Now the difficult bit: take away the number that you first thought of originally. Okay. So you're left with a number now. I'm going to try and see into the future. I'm going to cut through time and space and guess what the number is in your head. I think it's 5. Was I right? Of course I was. Because I wasn't obviously predicting the future. I wasn't doing magic. I was just getting you to do some rudimentary maths. I can't really see into your head. I was just trying to get you to use your mind a bit. Minds like to be used, don't they, you see? Especially when they're listening to a talk like this on video. So it was my way of getting you involved early on. And that was a bit of a risk, of course, to open that way, because you might feel duped, you might not think it was particularly funny, or even realise it was supposed to be funny, or you might have known what I was doing all along and aren't particularly impressed. But I'm hoping that the risk was worth it, because there's a lot of talks you could have chosen on here, and there's nothing stopping you from clicking away the moment you get a bit bored. Not just for other isolated talks, of course, but frankly, literally anything else. I'm competing with the entire internet, so I had to try something. Besides, this is a talk about magic and risk. So putting those two things together right at the start seemed like the obvious thing to do. But slightly more seriously, I also wanted to get you thinking about the theme of this talk, which is about predicting the future. At the moment, I bet many of us would love to be able to do just that. Everything seems so uncertain. There's risk attached to pretty much anything you might care to do. Risk and uncertainty aren't really things we like too much, even at the best of times, but especially now. So to see how true that is, let's try a quick thought experiment. If you were given the chance to temporarily see into the future, for real, would you take it? If you knew what was going to happen, would it make you feel better? I'm pretty sure lots of businesses would. I'm certain that my wife would. She loves a plan, hates uncertainty. But the thing is, I'm not sure that I would take up that offer. Now, I'm someone who's been made redundant during COVID, and I'm not really sure what the future holds. So I'd have a lot to gain from a little glimpse into the future. I'd know what happens next, and I could plan for it. But even so, I'm not sure I'd take up the chance. So today I want to try and explain to you why, and convince you too that deep down, you wouldn't really take it up either. So let's start with our attitude to risk. I'm not talking about, of course, the genuine risks our frontline workers are taking right now. I hope that goes without saying. I'm talking about the way that we as humans perceive risk generally. Of course, everybody's view is different. Some of us run full tilt to roller coasters, and others don't even go on a water slide. Some people drive really recklessly, others are far more cautious. And to make it even more complicated, as individuals, we're not really consistent. We might take out home insurance, for example, but forget to lock our windows. Now, as a planner, though, I'm conditioned to look for what we sort of tend to call universal human truths. And it was when I was doing that for a new investment brand a few years ago that I started to appreciate the hold that risk has over us and our view of the future. This brand wanted to promote investment for all and had a really cool algorithm. It reduced the kind of huge fees you'd normally have to pay to investment managers. So I talked to people who were curious about investing but had never tried it. And after a while, I discovered, of course, that when it comes to money and predicting the future, uncertainty rules. It's impossible for people to know what's going to happen. So at some point, it felt to them that every choice that they made now would prove to be unwise at some point in the future. And not only that, there were so many providers to choose from. The choice is kind of overwhelming. So for people, I think, when it's that easy to get something wrong, the smartest thing to do turns out to be nothing, which is exactly what people did and what people do. Do nothing and no one could do you over. Eliminate all the risk of the future and you can feel more certain in the present. And of course, certainty is something that makes us feel comfortable. But there's a problem. There's a danger, I think, that this approach to risk inhibits growth in other aspects of our lives. We're not very good with probability, so we sometimes forget that every new venture comes with some kind of risk. That new job, deciding to move house, committing to a relationship. And then, of course, there's the risks that we may take in our creative lives too, which often inhibit us. These risks often manifest as fear of failure, fear of ridicule or judgment, the fear, of course, of just not being very good. Overcoming these fears is essential if we're to reach our full potential or simply feel fulfilled in our lives. To be creative is, I think, by definition, to risk failure, to fail better with each attempt. Without this, nothing new is ever done. And without trying new things, we stagnate. Like that money people didn't get around to investing, our value drops far below what it could be. If we try to eliminate risk in our professional and creative lives, we'd be denying ourselves the greatest gift that we have as humans, the capacity for creativity and growth. So rather than avoid it or let it inhibit us or pretend it doesn't even exist, risk is something that I think we should embrace. When we lean into our discomfort, we can find out what we're truly capable of. At times it can be exhilarating. It can feel disarmingly like magic. I'll give you a silly example. Years ago, I attended a training course on risk-taking. There were 8 of us, all from the same agency, and we were away for 2 days, staying overnight at a lovely hotel in leafy Surrey, outside London. Day 1 was all about embracing discomfort. We had to give a prepared presentation that revealed something of ourselves, and we had to perform a piece of poetry or prose to the rest of the group. Now that bit I hated. I felt really exposed. It didn't matter that everyone else was doing the same. There's just something in me that hates this kind of thing. It's like, to me, fancy dress. I'm just no good with being or looking like I look ridiculous. So as a result, I bottled it. I really held back in that performance of that poetry, and I knew it. And it niggled at me all night until we were briefed on the task for the next day. Day 2 was about splitting into 2 teams of 4 and making a 10-minute video on the nature of risk-taking. So by this point, after a day of just kind of exposing ourselves, it was pretty clear that the trainer was not going to reveal to us the essence of risk-taking. It was something we were going to have to work out for ourselves. But something clicked, and I suggested to my team that we lean into the discomfort that we'd all felt yesterday and maybe even make it harder for ourselves. The idea for the video then was this. We drive into nearby Guildford, removing ourselves from the safe corporate training bubble of our hotel, and perform our pieces again, only this time in public, where people could actually see. Each of us was going to choose a shop on the high street, and another of the team would film us, and we'd all learn something about what it was to expose ourselves to ridicule and the risk of ridicule. And that's when the ludicrousness kind of hit us. It felt really real. We all froze. We were like Goldilocks. Oh, that shop's too small, that one's too big, that one's too busy, that one's too quiet. And we were like those investors again. Too much choice, all too easy to get it wrong, and it felt like the smartest thing to do was nothing. But at that moment, it being my bloody stupid fault that we were there in the first place, I just decided I'm going to do this. And the relief in the team was deafening. Someone had volunteered to go first. So I decided on the W.H. Smith's that was just next to where we were, asked for someone to follow me in with the camera, and walked in. When I watched it back on camera afterwards, what I did in there seemed just really mundane. Just a tall bloke reading out loud. But inside the shop, reading this poem, it felt extraordinary. It felt transgressive, quite exciting, like we were going against all the rules, like reading in poetry in public. Man, stick it to the man. Sadly, the man stuck it to me instead, as a security guard came up to me and asked me to leave before I'd finished my poem. So I was very disappointed, but the adrenaline was incredible. Now, I get there's a danger that this story is a bit like hearing about a party you didn't go to. It's all a bit, you had to be there. And ridiculous as it sounds, though, when I think back to that day, I remember feeling really proud. I'd embraced my discomfort and as a result felt incredibly bonded to that team as we went through something kind of really strange. And we all felt alive in a new weird way, like we'd grown a bit. It was strangely profound. It was indefinable, I'd say, but we all felt it. We just took that first step and it just appeared, this thing. Out of that sense of risk and leaning into it came magic. And this is the essence of magic and risk, I think. We can't have one without the other, but it's so worth it. Something happens when you take any creative risk, and if you've felt it, you know. You're writing, and the words miraculously come. You get up from a desk to go for a walk, and everything falls into place. You're working on a brief, and everything's on the wall, and a pattern starts to emerge. Of course, it's just our brains doing what they do. We take our unconscious with us everywhere we go, and it's always there, waiting to bubble up. So we're carrying this potential around with us all the time. And yet, when it happens, it feels like magic, because it does just happen. It's the magic of things falling into place just when you need them. It's the magic of serendipity, finding connections between two apparently disparate things at just the right time. It's the magic of invention, of creativity. It's the magic, too, of stories. It's the thing that we do best as humans. There's a quote I love, attributed to the German poet Goethe. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. If you can be bold and embrace what makes you uncomfortable, you unleash the full power of your potential. Face down the risk, tap into the magic. But you need to be working. For the words to flow, you have to write. For the walk to provide that breakthrough, you need to be tackling a problem. To see the pattern, you need to be fully immersed in the world of that brief. But also, it's not just about working. You have to commit something. You have to give up something of yourself. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You have to risk, I think, looking ridiculous. Like I did, reading poetry out loud in Smith's. And like I did, attempting a magic trick over video. You need to make yourself vulnerable because, and here's the real kicker, to truly find the magic, you need to follow it where it leads you. If you trust in it, it will definitely lead you somewhere. It always does. You just don't know exactly where, and that's what makes it so exciting. If you set out thinking you know what you're looking for, chances are you won't find it, because the magic is really the feeling of discovery, of exploration. Looking for something you already think you know is just wayfinding. Creativity is about trusting in the connections you find between your experiences, associations, memories, and new inputs to fashion something new. Creativity is what lets you believe in something before it has begun to exist. That's what allows a new idea to be born. Creativity needs uncertainty. If you knew where you were headed, you wouldn't open yourself up to new possibilities. If you knew what was coming, it would break the spell. If you could predict the future, you wouldn't engage fully with the challenges of the present. So you wouldn't invent anything. You wouldn't grow. The magic wouldn't work. So, maybe it's understandable, given everything we're going through right now, that we find certainty appealing. There's a lot to be fearful about, and we'd all like fewer things left to chance. But when it comes to our creative and professional lives, we need uncertainty. Without it, there's no magic. There's only lame maths puzzles. So no, as tempting as it may be, I wouldn't like to know the future. Risk is good. Risk is the price of entry for the magic that makes us feel most alive. So if there's something that you can do right now, or have always wanted to do, don't let the uncertainty of now stop you. Instead, embrace it if you can. Take a risk. Give it a go. Be bold. The world needs your genius, your power. It needs your magic. Thank you.